I would like to introduce our speaker today, David Attwell, who generously agreed to say a few words at this opening. David is probably well known to many of us. He's currently Professor of English at York University. He started his career at the University of the Western Cape, where I teach as well, subsequently becoming Chair of English at UKZN, and then the Witwatersrand Road. David has published widely in South African literature, but of relevance, I think, today are his books on Coetzee. The first book, arising out of the PhD thesis, M Coetzee and the Politics of Writing, situated Coetzee's fictions in the fraught context of late apartheid in South Africa. The next book, Doubling the Point, was an edited collection of essays and absorbing interviews that remains essential reading to any Coetzee scholarship today. His most recent book, M Coetzee and the Life of Writing, is a meticulously researched and revelatory study of the Texas archive, tracing the complex emergence of authorship in the manuscripts. David's scholarship has done much to make Coetzee readable to an ever-increasing global audience. A few weeks ago in F Coetzee, John Coetzee's Dutch publisher, I saw the Chinese translation of David Attwell's Life in Writing. So I can't think of any better than David, to use an old-fashioned word, the doyen of Coetzee scholars, to open this exhibition today. So thank you very much, David.
Thank you so much, Herman. Coetzee scholarship is, of course, a worldwide undertaking, so I'm glad I don't have all that responsibility on my shoulders, but that's a very kind introduction. Thank you. Derek Attridge, my colleague, is here somewhere. Hello, Derek. Derek pointed out to me the other day that most of us, as teenage boys, when we acquired our first camera, we would generally spend our time putting frames around things. Composed scenes, portraits, animals, a lot of animals, family groups, mountains, ocean. Somewhere in the background there might have been some glamour about a spy camera, but few of us actually acted on it. As John Coetzee says in an interview with Herman, there was the problem of expense, of course, which is why the dark room became such an attractive solution. Where one could develop one's own images. But unlike most of us, John Coetzee's relationship with the camera really was exceptional. He experimented in ways that are in these beautiful images around us with shadow and shutter speed and angle and of course these particularly moving images of members of his family. His mother caught in quite extraordinary moments of repose, reflection, and so on. The influence of photography is obvious in all of Coetzee's fiction, from the grim photographs kept by the narcissist Eugene Dorn in the Vietnam Project, his very first piece of fiction, through to the photographer protagonist of Slow Man, Paul Raymond, published 30 years later in 2003. There's also the influence of film, of course, in the early fiction, especially in the Heart of the Country and in Life and Times of Michael Kay. But film is a slightly different matter. The photographs in Dusklands have to do with power, not the power of the image, but the power in the image, the way they enact power, and the uses to which that power is put in propaganda. One of the most striking fictional uses of photography is in Age of Iron, when Mrs. Curran is perusing photographs from her childhood, when she herself is facing terminal illness and the country is in a state of conflagration. And she's struck, looking at an image of herself as a child, at how much history the image excludes. And she wonders whether with the click of the shutter, something malevolent has leapt out of the camera and entered her. So she feels corrupted, and she thinks that the innocence of the image must be the result of some kind of occultation that's taken place. It's a beautiful moment of writing, although it is grim, but it shows the extent to which Coetzee works with photography in his fiction. Doesn't just refer to it, but actually makes it part of the work that the fiction does. There is a review by John Coetzee of a volume of historical photographs edited by Mona de Beer, a collection called Visions of the Past, South Africa in Photographs, from 1843 to 1910, some remarkably early images. It's another searching review by John Coetzee in which he looks for signs of the past coming to life, but he is also on guard against the effects of sepia, of the image producing nostalgia, distances himself from that perspective. And those concerns are taken up in the much later Slow Man. Paul Raymond is an immigrant to Australia, and he locates himself in Australian history by collecting the work of the actual French photographer Antoine Fauchery, who worked on the goldfields of Ballarat. The novel ironizes that project when images from Raymond's collection are stolen from him and then later photoshopped. Of course, he's horrified at that development. Herman, in his work, and also Iona Gilbert, if she's here, have introduced into Coetzee's studies the idea of intermediality, the uses of different media in the fiction, not only film and photography, but also painting and, of course, particularly music. Interdisciplinarity is something we've known about for some time, the uses of philosophy, of literary theory, and of history in the fiction. But intermediality is something quite new and very productive in Coetzee's studies. And what the intermediality reveals, and in fact what this beautiful exhibition reveals, is that John Coetzee is an artist in a comprehensive sense. We've always known that he is stunningly well-read and learned and scholarly, that he positions himself within the traditions of the novel very carefully and so forth. But what we are discovering through the intermediality is the extent to which he works with a range of expressive resources to create fiction that is open-ended, productive. I want to use the word polysemous. His fiction is a space in which representation is always on the surface as a live issue. And when we enter that space as readers, we become alert to the whole representational field as part of the experience of the novels. And in that sense, we become co-creators of meaning. The exhibition shows that this capacity in John Coetzee is not an outcome of learning. It's an expression of temperament, which found an outlet at a remarkably early age. So let me close with a few words of thanks to Herman. Christopher has already mentioned this, but I'd like to emphasize it. The rolls of film from which these images are developed could not have fallen into better hands. Herman was able to recognize immediately the potential of this part of the Coetzee archive. And then he had the insight and the foresight, the understanding, and the curatorial ability, the organizational skill to realize this exhibition. So thank you, Herman, for giving us this unique perspective on what is and is likely to remain for many years the most influential authorship in our literature. Thank you very much indeed.